A very happy Thursday, our wonderful viewers, and welcome to Leaders of Africa Live. My name is Violet Achumo. Leaders of Africa Live features expert panel discussions on themes ranging from public health to politics with an interactive audience experience. We are delighted that you joined us today for a very special show, #EndSARS More Than a Protest. But first, we encourage you to engage in the conversation at leadersofafrica.org/live and subscribe to our YouTube channel using the red subscribe button down below. And also turn on the notification bell by clicking the bell icon right next to the subscription icon. We produce content for thought leaders like you, and subscribing to our channel allows you to hear it first. So don't wait to subscribe, and while you're at it, please like and share the videos. You can also continue the conversation by joining our private Facebook group, Telegram channel, and Discord community. EndSARS protests began on social media and spilled onto the streets in Nigeria. The original aim of the protest was to disband the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, also known as SARS, and have a broader conversation about police brutality. As the protests and global movement grew, the EndSARS protests became a platform for discussing political, social, and economic reform in Nigeria. With protests ongoing in the country, the government has enacted curfews and moved in to repress the protests, resulting in deaths. This further highlights the need for security sector reform and sheds light on the uphill battle for large-scale reform. To discuss this and reflect on the direction of the EndSARS movement, we are joined by Omowumi Ogunrotimi, a gender rights advocate, legal practitioner, and founder of Gender Mobile Initiative. She is also the deputy head of the Sectoral Committee on Women and Gender, AU-ECOSOCC Nigeria. We are also joined by Kola Osinowo, who is a sales, marketing, and business innovation leader and served as the chairperson for JCI's Corporate Partnerships Committee in 2019. And finally by Ayodeji Obelawo, who is a seasoned banker and economic analyst. Thank you so much for joining us today. And now to our hosts Jalili Ghana Adebi and Peter Penar. Take it away, gentlemen.
Hello and welcome, everyone. It's good to be with you. I am Peter, as I mentioned, and I am here with my co-host, that is Jalili Ghana Adebi. How are you doing, Ghana? We are on mute. Please take yourself off mute.
Yeah, I'm doing great, Peter, and it's so exciting to be back on the live broadcast today, exploring the issues surrounding EndSARS protest in Nigeria. And it's great to have these three very great individuals to join the conversation today. And we welcome our viewers that are participating through various platforms.
Yeah, we're good to be here. And I'll just remind our guests, sometimes you can mute yourself and unmute yourself. Just make sure to unmute yourself when we are speaking, something we're all getting used to in this period of COVID-19 when we're doing all of these virtual events. But it's good to be here with you. So let's just jump right in. And I want to start with you, Ayodeji. How did we get to the EndSARS protests in Nigeria? Could you sort of speak to some of the immediate causes, as well as perhaps the deeper causes that are leading to these protests, both in social media and now on the ground in Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Peter. And I want to welcome the audience to this stimulating discourse. Well, to go straight to the question, we've had this coming for the past 21 years, ever since we started democracy. It was just an event that is bound to happen because people have bottled up emotions over the past 21 years. For the immediate cause, in Nigeria, and as we have seen in some other parts of the world, police brutality, police lack of empathy for the citizens that are meant to protect, police indiscretion in the use of force in tackling in tackling crime in Nigeria has been on the rise for the past couple of years. We have seen young people, we are in a digital age. We have seen young people that are trying to make their ends meet. The jobs are not really out there for the youth. And the youth are now trying to take advantage of the of technology, of the new digital age, to make a living for themselves. You've seen a lot, genuine youth that are going into digital space to make a living for themselves. And we've seen series of cases of police arresting people indiscriminately and trying to extort them. They will be arrested, taken to the station. You have to pay before you will be released. Or apart from that, some people that might not be able to pay, they are summarily killed without any justice. That's extrajudicial killing. So all these things are built up over the years, and it got to an end like 2-3 weeks ago when there was an incident that happened at Ughelli. But even that aside, that's just the immediate cause. That's just the trigger of this particular protest that we are witnessing in Nigeria as of today. The other underlining cause of this protest includes the likes of societal injustice. Societal injustice that we have seen that, okay, it is only the rich that usually get justice, or it is only the people that have the people that can buy judgment that we usually get the favorable judgment. You will see somebody that steals 10 million, 10 million naira, or let me just convert it to dollars. Let's even say $100,000, maybe because of our international audience, for them to have a grasp of what we are discussing about. It will steal $100,000. At the end of the day, the person will be sentenced to 6 months imprisonment and be asked to pay 100,000 naira. And somebody will steal just ordinary phone of 10,000 naira or even 100,000 naira. That is just like $3,000 or $3,000, and the person will be sentenced to like 20-something years imprisonment. So the societal injustice is there, and apart from that, there is also inequality in our society. Inequality in the sense that the rich people, the number of rich people, I can tell you that the rich people, let me say the upper class, have like 95% of the wealth of this country in their hands. And you are just breeding an army of poor people. It will definitely get to a stage when this army of poor people will turn on you, and you have nowhere to run to. So those have been the underlining. Those are the let me say the other causes of this protest. And most importantly, there has been a disappointment in democracy in Nigeria, democracy in Africa. And the question that is going on now, that is democracy really the right discussion, the right of governance for Nigeria or for Africa, for us to also improve or for us to also develop like the other developed countries? Because we have seen over and over the politicians disappointing us for the past 21 years, from one administration to the other, promises unfulfilled. Before the election, they will come and make promises. Immediately after the election, after the election and after bribing their way into governance, they will forget about the people, and what they are just after is their own pocket and their own immediate family. So we've had this coming. All those ones are just bottled up emotion, and the trigger is just the NSAS, the issue of the SARS brutality that culminated into all what we are seeing that is playing out now. And we should also not forget the impact of COVID-19 in the last 6 months that actually happened. And we've seen the students have been at home, the lecturers are on strike, and all those ones are also remote courses that's led to all this. So it's a very broad cause. We have a very broad area of coverage when we are looking at the causes. So I just try to summarize everything all together to us, to maybe for our international audience, to have a brief idea of what has led to this in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we're going to dive into each of those different issues. These are so very important issues. And I just want to reflect really broadly, on that issue of democracy, which we're going to talk about in a bit. Is democracy working? Or maybe a larger question we're going to wonder is there really a democracy in Nigeria, right? Is there even presently the features of democracy that we can begin to think about it and perhaps even question regimes? So we'll get into that in a bit. Over to you, Ghana.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Dr. Ayodeji, for that insight into the issues about police brutality in Nigeria. Myself, I went through this experience in the country, and there has been a lot of conversation about police brutality. And I've listened to some people also discuss the causes of the excesses that possibly led to the EndSARS movement, accumulation of past frustrations and current frustrations of the citizens of the country. So, Omowumi, my question to you is this, and the same question, I will want Mr. Kola Osinowo to address the same question. What, in your opinions, are the primary causes or the drivers of the excesses committed by police in Nigeria? Because it's very possible that if we get into the nitty-gritty of the drivers of these excesses, that we might be able to advance solutions to the problem in a way that will get it behind us. Because a good number of the folks that are listening to us are policymakers who want to listen to what you guys have to offer regarding the drivers of the excess of police brutality in Nigeria. Over to you, Director Omowumi.
Or on mute. We cannot hear you.
Thank you for that, Peter. Yeah, thank you so much for that question. First, I'm so excited to be on this platform. Also because, this is an opportunity for us to talk about a very great proportion in the. And to the question you asked, I think it's important to, also acknowledge the fact that this EndSARS campaign is a unified movement, towards ending police brutality. And when we talk about police brutality, this is a byproduct of a systemic failure that has festered over an extended period of time in Nigeria. And let me also state that, prior to this time, there has been an interesting trend with respect to police brutality, which recently rose to prominence, because of this video that went viral. And like Dr. Ayodeji did say, it's actually a trigger. But a lot of factors account for police brutality in Nigeria. And I'd like to refresh our memory on the very essence of establishing the Nigerian police, or let me say the SARS unit itself. And I think back in 1992, when we had this high crime rate around armed robbery, kidnapping, cultism on campuses. And it became very imperative to establish a unit that would primarily address these issues. Now, over this extended period of time, the question is, have we been able to address these issues? Do we still have the prevalence of this crime the way it was in 1992 and the way it is now? If the answer is not in the affirmative, then the question is, have we had an opportunity to audit, to check, to regulate the activities of SARS as a unit? So the cumulative effect of this, is what we have today. The SARS unit in the Nigeria.
Yeah, continue.
So it seems you are raising the argument that maybe SARS might have overstayed its relevance, or there might be the need to regulate SARS. But could you please pause a minute and think about the level of crimes in our neighborhood today?
Right.
The Lagos I grew up, the Lagos I spent my university days, we never had courtesans in our neighborhood. It appears to me that courtesans are all over the place in Lagos neighborhood now. The Yahoo Plus guys are all over the place in the neighborhood now. Are you discounting this fact in your assessment and your framing of the conversation about the level of crime in Lagos State and elsewhere in the country? And I'd like you to consider all these factors in your response to this question.
Great. Thank you for bringing my mind back to that. So the issue is, the kind of crime we had in 1992, which basically forms the cruise of the setting up of SARS. Those patterns of crime that we had back then. Do we still have that same pattern of crime as it is today? If at that time, SARS was equipped essentially to address issues bordering on armed robbery, to address issues bordering on kidnapping, and today what we have is cybercrime. The SARS of 1992, are they equipped, to address issues bordering on cybercrime? So these are some of the issues that we really need to put our minds to. And that's why I said, if the way SARS was constituted in 1992 was to address a particular issue, do we take our time to audit the practices of SARS to be sure that what worked in 1992 is still able to work, in 2020? So that, for me, it's something that we really need to beam the light. So that is not to say that, the crime rate has declined, but it is to check the practices, the culture, the policies that we have in place. Do these things, are they still working? Do they still address the issues that are emerging today? So that, for me, is key, and we really need to, beam the light on these issues.
Absolutely. And I'm curious, Kola, just building on that, there have been a number of NGOs in Nigeria that have dealt with or have commented on issues of police brutality, issues of police reform in the country. Obviously, there are a number of NGOs, both more countrywide as well as local. One that comes to mind for me is the Clean Foundation, based in Abuja and also with offices in Lagos. And I'm curious, up to this point, as we've talked about sort of the history of crime, the history of police brutality, how effective or ineffective have some of these NGOs been at confronting the issues of police brutality as well as making them widely known in the country? In other words, why are we at this point where we're now talking about reform now when there has been this sort of civil society movement towards ending police brutality for many years? Has it not been effective, or has there been sort of policy challenges standing in the way of reform?
Thank you very much, Peter and Dr. Ayodeji, for this opportunity. Just before I respond, firstly, my deepest condolences to all the families that have lost their loved ones during this period. It's a trying time. I've seen images of mothers actually carrying their sons and weeping. Quite emotional for a lot of us who are seeing these images on social media. So my deepest condolences to all the families and everyone impacted by this. Even the businesses today, where hoodlums are actually looting all their businesses across the state and across the country. It's a very tough one to live within COVID and still survive in a very tough environment and still have your businesses looted. So my deepest condolences to everyone. Back to your question, and I'll also speak on the duality of the issue that I see. Let me say categorically that one government policy, one government action can amplify the work of 1,000 NGOs. So even if you have 1,000 NGOs, 1 million NGOs working towards the reform of the police, speaking against police brutality, one government action would resolve everything that they've been working for. So the point is that what we've seen, just like Omowumi said, is a systemic issue, a decay of the policy framework of our society. And when I say the duality of the issue is, we need to look at it from the perspective of the young people, as well as the perspective of the government institutions that are supposed to protect the citizens. So let's take it from the perspective of the young people. And I'll come back to the policies that have been put in the past and how governments, whether they implemented it or not. You have a demographic of young people that is 64% that is below the age of 35. It's a waiting time bomb if their energies, their passions are not properly channeled or harnessed. You have a country where the unemployment rate has increased to almost 21%. So that tells you that if you don't invest in the young people, you will create monsters like we're seeing today in terms of hoodlums taking over peaceful protest that has gone across the country. What you see today is that a lot of young people, compared to 21 years ago, when we started democracy, the internet has advanced, technologies have advanced, social media has advanced. You have what we call purposeful millennials now, who are looking for hashtags to anchor their anger on. So the NSAS is just an anchor. The hashtag NSAS was just an anchor on a series of issues that is impacting young people. The lack of employment, the bad roads in the country, the increment in electricity tariffs, the inability to get good jobs. So all that was just anchored on NSAS because there was a trigger that happened. So that's it on the part of the young people. And there's a legitimate reason why they need to ask for and demand for accountability from people that they have voted into power. Now, on the other side of the police, you also see that the police is the most, maybe the Nigerian police is the most ill-equipped to handle the kind of crimes. Crime is crime. I mean, in 1992, the SARS was set up to deal with crime. But the crime has evolved, even up to cyber crime today. But as the police formation, the infrastructure, has it evolved with that with time? So you go to a police college where they live in dehumanizing conditions. You think of a police within the rank and file, and you see where they live in the barracks. It's so deplorable and dehumanizing. Then you look at the salaries at which they are paid. They're not even paid up to, I mean, if you compare that with what the National Assembly members earn, and you now give a gun to that same person that you do not care about in terms of his welfare, the salary is deplorable. There's no policies around health insurance. There's no good schools for their own kids. And you now give that kind of person a gun. Then you have created two time bombs that was just waiting to ignite itself. And the NSAS, and there's a friction between the institutions that have been created to protect the citizens and the citizens expecting accountability from the institution that is supposed to protect them. Ditto the soldiers as well. You see them going to the front line, fighting the Boko Haram with ill-equipped, the basic things that a soldier is supposed to use to fight crime. Having said that, there have been several panels, several reform committees, and there are a lot of them. The challenge I have today is that none of these reports have fully been implemented by the government. Now we are setting up a panel of inquiries again across the state. That's why genuinely the young people are tired, and they are saying, look, you said you've made this commitment several times, but why not just go back to the previous report and implement what is there? Good salaries for the police, welfare for them, equipping them properly. All this has been in previous reports. Then we're not setting up another panel to reform SARS, change the name of it. And that is where the mistrust came in between the protesters and the government.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point. I think that's a good point, Kola. Before you jump in there, Ghana, I think that's a good point. A lot of people are pointing out on social media, and those in civil society are pointing out that a lot of work has been done, that there have been some suggestions for police reform, as you've mentioned, Kola. But it's about the implementation of some of those suggestions that have been there for a number of years. And I'm glad you raised that issue. Yeah, over to you, Ghana.
I mean, these were very interesting insight into the conversation on NSAS. So I like us to go back a little bit to the issue of NSAS itself. Let's go deeper into this. Because when the protest erupted, there were some concerns in some quarters that this is a protest without definite leadership, a strength and also a weakness in the sense that it could be a recipe for disaster, just like we are beginning to see as things are spiraling out of control. And the other concern that some people have raised is that there seems to be some issues with the nature of the demands and the continued insistence to be on the street. And if I got Kola right, it seems Director Kola argued that the concern is about the distrust about the implementations of those reforms. Mm-hmm. And is there a kind of mismatch between staying on the street, continue staying on the street, and the nature of the demands put on the table by NSAS? And here I want us to think specifically about two things. Ending SARS doesn't mean that reforms are going to take place immediately. Do you think that the people at the call of this protest possibly got that wrong? Because it appears to me and some of us that their interest is that they want the police unit in Nigeria, the tool and reform, to be people-friendly. But it also appears to some of us, and to some commentary that I've read in tutors and elsewhere, that they want the reforms now and now. Do you think this is something that the protester got wrong, or something that they could have done differently? Over to you, Dr. Ayodeji.
Okay, thank you very much, Ghana. And did they get that? One thing that you must know about Nigeria and the protest in general is that the protest was widely applauded, was widely supported, and was called for, was commended by every sane person all over the world. And the truth is, like we keep referring to over the years, there has been a mistrust of the Nigerian government. Why? Because we've seen over the years promises being made. People will back down, believing that government will go ahead and do what they have promised the people. But at the end of the day, it will not be done, and we're back to status quo. And on this particular protest, the youth were just saying, no, we are not going to get off the street until you implement our demands. Yes, SARS was dissolved. Yes, panels of inquiry were set up. Yes, there were efforts by government to accede to the demands of the protester. Fine, beautiful. And I also think that the leaders of the protest, though they said there was no leader, but it's become very difficult when you keep saying we don't have a leader. There will always be people that are driving that particular protest. They did not inform the protesters rightly. Because as of 2019, a police act was just signed into law. And that particular police act, based on what Dr. Kola has already rightly mentioned earlier on, that we've had cases of police not being properly funded. You put licensed and official guns in the hands of these people. And they too, they are seeing the amount of work that is going on in the society. It's just a matter of time. They will take advantage of the guns that have been put in their hands by the taxpayers to protect them. So in that particular new law, there is a new funding ratio of, I think 0.5% of the revenue that is accrued to the federal government is meant to be specially allocated to police trust fund. And this is meant to fund the police like the way there's a structure like that that's currently working in Lagos. And we can see that RRS is one of the most effective police units in the whole of Nigeria. Very professional, very effective, and very efficient. I think that's what they're trying to replicate at the national level. And that was signed to law in 2019 before we had the issue of COVID and all that. And although our legislators did not do a proper, they didn't do a proper work on that particular act, on that that's not a bill, that's not a act, because that 0.5 even contravenes the Constitution itself. So they still have to take that bill back to the House to amend the bill to be able to accommodate that 0.5% that is being proposed, because the Constitution says every amount of money that's coming to the Federation must get into the consolidated fund first before it will be shared out. And so the act actually contravenes, and they're trying to find a way around. So the reason why those protesters did not get off the street is because of the mistrust in the Nigerians generally have for the government. But I just believe, I would have felt that in every protest, there should always be a strategy. Always review as the protest is going on, or as you are making your demand, be reviewing that, be reviewing your strategies and be retweaking it. For them not to have left the street or for that period of time, yes, they were due to protest. But was it right after some time, knowing that hoodlums have started taking over? I don't think that was right. We should have re-strategized and probably go off the streets for some time. And if the government, and give the government a timeline, a deadline, that if this is not made within a particular period of time, we will be back on the street and to continue with our demands. But be that as it may, they did not get off the street and things spiraled out of control. So for me, I still feel that it was due to the mistrust of the government. And it's that time the government starts making us to believe and to have trust in our government, and that no, if our government says A, the government will definitely do the A for us. Not we seeing only promises that will never be kept for the next generation. And this is what
so Dr. Ayodeji, this question is also for you, because you mentioned the issue of distrust. It's been about the government. Let's talk about the protest again. Okay. Again, the question, what could they have done? Did they bring anything to the table regarding shifting the protest to having the conversation that goes across different states of the country? Is there any mention of this? Because when I listened to Governor Shewolu speak yesterday, and I listened to different commentators on these issues, one thing I've been asking myself is this: was there something brought to the table by the protesters across the Federation regarding having that conversation, moving away from the street? Let's sit down and discuss about this issue. Is there anything like this that you've come across from the perspective of the protesters? And if there is none, could this be one of the things you ought to have done differently?
Okay, thank you, Ghana. I strongly believe that demands were actually made. And one of the strategy maybe that worked for this protest, one of the strengths of this protest is also the weak point of this protest. The ideology of we have no leader was beautiful at the beginning, was nice at the beginning, because it was able to bring the philosophy was we are all equal and we are all the same, there's no leader, so everybody is working as an entire unit. But you cannot be on the street forever. You cannot be on the street continuously. And there must be a time, every protest, every struggle, every demand, or every show of grievances with the state, against the state, always end up on the table. But because there was no leader, who do you dialogue with? So that makes the conversation very difficult for the government. That makes the conversation very difficult for even the protester. Because who are we going to appoint as a leader? And that still goes back to the issue of mistrust. Because over the years, people have chosen leaders that, okay, go and represent us and make our demands known to government. And at the end of the day, those guys will just go to the round table and they will go and negotiate their own interests. So that mistrust that has been extended to the government also pervades the entire Nigerian society. So that's why they are saying they don't have a leader. And that's one of the weak points of this particular protest. It was the strength and it was also the weak point of the protest. I feel that at a point in time, they should have reviewed the strategy and say, okay, at this point, let us appoint our leaders. Our leaders go in there and we watch the live feed of whatever is happening there. We should be able to even send the message to you that ask them this question. They should have utilized technology to also demand that we want to be part of the meeting. Of course, all of us cannot be inside that hall where the meeting is being held, but we want to see the live feed. We want to hear everything that is going on. And if we need to make our demands right from outside, we can make that demand. And that was actually so the strength of the protest is also actually the weak point of that particular protest. Thank you.
So I want to go to some of the comments that have been shared on the social media as well as the YouTube stream. So keep those comments coming. Idris writes in that the police budget is critical to their effectiveness. I think reflecting on some of the comments that Kola had made earlier in his remarks. Malik says that I think that the End SARS process may lead to reforming Nigeria now. So a broader reform agenda, which we'll get to in a minute. And then Hakeem also says that not getting off the streets at the right time was a bad strategy, reflecting on what we've just been talking about, and that the battle is lost now. nobody is talking about end SARS anymore, right? Suggesting that there has been, in a sense, a strategic blunder in these protests. And I want to talk a little bit about that strategy, but also about the demands as well. And we've been focusing a lot on sort of the demands to end police brutality. But as we began our discussion, Ayodeji, you mentioned that this protest is about other things, deeper and systemic inequalities in the country, in particular issues of corruption. And it strikes me that some of those issues relate to broader reform that needs to be made and a sustained campaign. They're not sort of these small demands that need to be made, right? And so I'm curious, in thinking about these broader demands, what is the effective strategy going forward? Is it protest and mobilization in the streets? Is it mobilization in civil society organizations? What kind of pressure can be brought to bear to deal with these larger pieces of reform that people are asking to? And I'm curious your thoughts, Omowumi, on this question.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Peter. So I think a good starting point in responding to that question will be to actually acknowledge the fact that there are three categories of protesters on the streets since this protest started. You know, we have people clamoring for immediate disbandment of the SARS unit. We also have people, talking about police reform, looking at, a complete overhaul of the Nigerian police. And thirdly, we have people who are talking about the broader social agenda, which you did mention earlier. So, and if you look at it, you'd realize that even after, they announced that the SARS unit had been disbanded, there was still a lot of agitation, also based on the fact that there's some kind of mistrust. You realize that, speaking about the social contract, where already everyone, we've submitted our rights, to the unitarizing agent, which is the government, which in turn is supposed to protect lives and property. But the citizens, now realize that they are their own federal government. I fill the potholes on my street. I dig borehole for myself. I provide light for myself. I buy generator. I do not have a job. I've taken to the streets to innovate, be an entrepreneur. So I am my federal government, I am my state government, I am my local government. So with this, there's that kind of mistrust that if the government can provide the basic necessities for us as citizens, why should we believe them that they will do this? So that for me, accounts for why, the protest lingered on this long, and also because a lot of people remained unexpressive as to the real reasons why we had this whole protest. So it boils down to major governance issues, which Dr. Ayodeji did mention. It's a failure of leadership. I did mention systemic failure earlier on. So it's a combination of so many factors. So at the point when federal government felt, okay, if it's about disbandment of SARS, SARS has been disbanded and they expected that people should, go back to their houses. And also the second part of it is, if it's talking about police reform, those of us clamoring for police understand that it doesn't take a day to reform the Nigerian police. If you're talking about police reform, you're talking about transforming the culture, the policies, the practices within the Nigerian police such that the Nigerian police will begin to have utmost regard for human rights and preservation of lives. That cannot happen in 2 weeks. That cannot happen in 1 month. But I also imagine that, if at the point where people were placing their demands on the table, the government disbanded SARS, but at some point we expected that they should have named some culpable officers, and, set motions in place to begin to prosecute these people. Let us see that you're doing something, and with that, perhaps, youths like myself would have given government an ultimatum within which they will be expected to do this. But also, learning from experience, from history, people also understand that it's more like a diminishing marginal returns, where, okay, we get it up to this point, people go back home and they feel government is already on it, then we lose the zest. We lose the momentum. So I think, we got to the point where we felt, let us leverage on this momentum. Let government see that we are pained. And while we were talking about the broader issues, we kept on clamoring for police reform, and we kept quiet about the broader issues that still kept us on the road. I imagine that at that point, while we were in our numbers, we understand that we have the numerical strength which we were leveraging. At that point, if we began to shift the conversation, not really shifting, but also extending the conversation to address other broader governance issues like corruption, like issue of education. A lot of students have been at home. Yes, I'm also doing a postgraduate degree. I've also been at home for an extended period of time due to ASU strike and also due to the rot in the educational sector. So it's a byproduct of systemic failure of leadership. And for me also, I don't think we've lost it completely, but I think it's important for us to go back to re-strategize. Like Dr. Ayodeji did say, we've gotten to a point where we realize that our strength, also doubles as our weakness. That shouldn't have been. But to also tell you that the mistrust has gotten to a point that we don't even trust ourselves as Nigerian youths. And that is why we found it difficult also to have, a leadership structure around this. So what we had was different units coordinating different things, mobilizing resources. And we had to stick to that because we also got to a point where we realized that everyone is a critical stakeholder. So it was difficult to say that this person, is the leader of the team, knowing fully well that even prior to this time, there have been persons leading the drive, the agitation, for NSAS, for police reform. But we've also just gotten to a point where we become more aware that, I only know of myself. And also, people are beginning to understand. Most of the young people you see on the street today are enlightened young people, educated young people who are, self-employed, who probably have also become passive when it comes to electoral matters. And I think that this also might change a lot of things, in 2023. For you to see the number of young people you saw outside on the street and people even clamoring for INEC to open offices for them to do their registration for voters card. So that is to tell you that this has also changed a lot of things. And I believe that it would also impact, on people's decision to come out to vote or to be more politically aware come 2023.
Just building off of that, you mentioned the youth in your response, and you were talking about sort of this issue of coordination of the movement and the difficulties that are present. Do you think some of these difficulties will lead to or have already been a result of certain groups or outside interests influencing the youth to behave in certain ways? In other words, are you afraid, Omowumi, that the youth and their attempts to organize will be captured by other interests, either within the country of Nigeria or perhaps even the diaspora outside of Nigeria?
Yeah, so I think so. So for me, the mere fact that we do not have a proper structure, like a leadership structure, it's about having people we can actually put at the fore that would serve as a voice. We have a unified voice, people that would make our positions known. It's not about them, talking on their own, but it's about people to represent us in the room. And the thing is, if we do not have that, then the purpose of doing this might be defeated. And we all understand that when purpose is undefined, abuse is inevitable. So with this also, I think it kind of gives an entry point for other interests outside to hijack this and even probably reorganize in a way that as young people that started this movement, we might lose bearing about what this whole agenda is all about.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. So I'd like to come in here and I'd like to start with my, excuse me, please. To start with my experience, when I was in the country as a student leader, I myself, again, I was a victim of police brutality. I've lost friends to police brutality. I've lost uncle to police brutality. So I know what police brutality is all about. And one thing I had the opportunity of reflecting upon when I left the country for further education is that I always think about the perception of the average Nigerian citizen of the police. Just like I think about the perception of an average Nigerian student of those that are administering over their institutions. Like most student leaders, they see those at the helms of affairs, their vice chancellor, their dean of student affairs, as the other opposite, the enemy to be comforted at all times. So I was wondering, Director Kola, you are a strategist. You are educated all over the globe. You have led various companies, to massive success. You've done well with Nokia. You've facilitated many startups in the country. You've been working with a lot of youth based on your profile and what we've heard about you. So my question to you is this, Director Kola. As somebody with a lot of depth on issues of perception, how much of perception of the citizens of police played in the refusal to leave the street when the ovation was loudest, and the dynamics that actually played out in this particular protest? And in answering this question, I want you to reflect on how do an average Nigerian citizen see the police? Do we see them as people that we need to respect, as folks that we need to work with, or we just see them as people that do not deserve our respect? And whatever your perspective is on this issue, how has that played into the refusal to leave the street when the ovation was loudest, and the issue of this distrust we are speaking about?
Thank you very much, and I think it's a very valid question, which will also help us shape the perspective. Let me just say quickly that when people say there was no leader of the protest, I think we are just being naive. We have been part of several movements, from Save Nigeria to Enough is Enough to Occupy Nigeria. I've never seen a protest so well organized, so well coordinated by young people, without the direct influence of the older generation. It's so well coordinated that even while all this was happening, the shooting was happening at the Lekki toll gate, young people were able to mobilize ambulances. They were able to mobilize blood banks. They were able to mobilize food, water, legal aid. They were able to raise over 70 million naira within few days through donation. So when you now say that kind of coordinated, project-managed protest across several cities in the country does not have a leadership, then I beg to differ. What I would say is that maybe perhaps there was a lack of strategy, because there must be some people coordinating all of this and making sure that everything was peaceful up until maybe like 10 days ago. And when we say there was no demand, and which is the question of the trust that I talked about, there was a 5 for 5 demand that even the Lagos State government took up to the presidency in Abuja. And you could see even from the outlook of the presidency, I mean, it was a parody, because it was not, there was that seriousness of, oh, this is the demand, and they were not, and the way even the presidency took it, it was a bit like, oh, not so serious. So you also see that if you look at also the demand, you have the short-term demand, you have the medium and long-term demand, which is clearly shared on social media. But back to the question of the perception of the police, I think what is critical here is that you go to the police station and you see, you hear police is your friend. But the reality is that every Nigerian sees a policeman as somebody who is about to extort you, even before whether I have all my things intact or not. This person is about to extort me, this person is about to oppress me. And if you look at it from the perspective of the police as well, they also feel that, oh, you are enjoying life, you are in your comfort zone, you have the best of things in life, we are the ones suffering to protect you. But what differentiates the two parties is the fact that one person has a gun, which is something that gives them that power. So this mistrust goes back to our value system. If we you travel in the US, you're about to board a plane, and they ask, do we have military personnel here? And they ask them to board first. So you see that they've given them the kind of, sorry, there's a bit of echo. You see that the kind of respect they are called police outside of Nigeria is on a different level. I have friends who have left the shores of the country and they've joined the US Police, US Marines, US Army, and the kind of respect they command from the citizens is on a different level. So it speaks back to how much the government even cherishes and nurtures and respects and values the people in the military today. And that is why they have also not shown that kind of respect to the citizen. So if I'm driving with all my papers complete, and as a policeman you still want me to give you a bribe, then it means that I would not respect you. Even if I give you the bribe, I will still not respect you, because I know that I can get away with anything just by giving you a bribe. And this is not just with the police alone. It's about every aspect of government institutions that you see today. And that goes back to the political will and the what we call the tone from the top. But the tone from the top of all these various institutions does not say this, that look, we're a respected organization, we are well paid. And it is the lowest of the lowest in the society that goes and joins this. The question to all of us on this panel is, why didn't we join the police? There are vacancies in the police. There are services could have been used. I mean, I work in technology. Maybe I should have joined the cybercrime unit of the police. But because there's no way they can pay the kind of salary I earn today, or I will not get the respect that I get today, then it is not a noble job for me, or the kind of way they painted the police. So it's a broader value system issue that the government needs to also demonstrate and role model itself. And that's why the citizens.
So Dr. Kola, back to this same question. Because it's been about the police. I've seen a lot of demonization of the police, a critical segment of our society back in Nigeria. So would you say there is a need for everyone in Nigeria to have a conversation in different communities at different layers of the society about what we need to do to work on ourselves and improve our perception of the police? Because what I think is this, my understanding of the issue, that if I see myself as being rejected in the society, I may choose to behave to type that after all I'm being rejected. That's the scenario. Another scenario is that I may choose to act the other way by finding out what do I need to change so that I'll be accepted in the society. So the question is this: what do we need to do as individuals, as communities, as civil societies, as leaders of thought, as youth, as stakeholders in the country, working on self to change our perception of the Nigerian police? Because it appears perception issue is a big one.
Perception is reality. And like I said when I started, one government action, one government policy can supersede 1,000 NGOs, whatever they will do. It is important that, for example, and this whole issue of protest would have de-escalated if the government just said, you know what, tomorrow we double the salary of the police. We do have the resources to do that. We double the salary of the police. Secondly, we move into the police barracks with construction equipment just to do some renovations there. It shows action. Thirdly, you go and you say, you know what, all government hospitals today, because government is the one funding all government hospitals, it is free medical for any police officer and their families. We have unity schools today funded by the government. It is free education for all officers of the. Just making such pronouncements a few days ago would have dulled a lot of attention. Again, it would have changed the complete perspective of the society. But as long as you are not paying the police well, and they still have to come to the street, and there's demand from from that guy that is riding a bike to survive, or that bus driver that is also struggling to make ends meet, and they are taking part of his income, they will never have respect for them, no matter how much you want the perception to be. So we need to put pressure on those in government, those we have voted for, those we have elected into power, the National Assembly, the state assemblies, the governors, and the federal government to ensure that the police is properly funded. And there are several reports that have been in the past speaking to this. Until there's a political will to implement at least one of these reports, then people will start changing their perception. Again, perception is reality.
So I want to just address some things that are being raised by the audience as well. And I want to encourage folks to chime in both at leadersofafrica.org/live. We have a place where you can ask questions, and we also have a place where you can answer polling questions. We have a poll there about the likelihood of police reforms, and we're curious your views, and we will come back to that. But one of the things that has been raised, and I want to touch on this, is the response of the government to the protests. And a number of our audience members have been reflecting on and talking about the response of the current president, President Buhari, and how he's sort of handled this situation and the prospects for him being actually able to lead a broad and national dialogue on some of these concerns. There seems to be a fair amount of pessimism about his leadership during this period of protest. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Ayodeji. Are you also pessimistic about the president's ability to lead a national dialogue on some of these issues that we've been talking about, either on police reform matters that we've been mentioning, but also broader societal concerns? Or are you pessimistic? Are you optimistic that he'll be able to lead that dialogue? Or perhaps maybe the president isn't the one that should be leading that dialogue, and perhaps other leaders in the country or at the grassroots level should be leading that dialogue. So I'm curious your thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Before I go to your question, I want to just touch briefly on what Kola just mentioned about the perception of the police. And the truth is, in Nigeria, I will make an example of the RRS in Lagos. The RRS in Lagos is a flagship of professionalism of the Nigerian police, and it's also a Nigerian police unit. This is a unit that can match up with any police force all over the world. They stop on the road, they help citizens, they take citizens from place of danger, take them to their homes, assist them in whatever way they can. I've seen cases whereby they've even gone on air to get petrol for vehicles of citizens. That is a police that we would like to see on our street. And Lagosians love the RRS. At the same time, I'm also mentioning IRT is an anti-kidnapping team, very efficient, led by Abba Kyari, very efficient, super effective, and people love that particular unit. So when we are saying that, there's a perception of the Nigerian police, we should also remember that there are some units of the Nigerian police that are also loved by the citizenry. Now, going to your question about the ability of President Buhari to be able to lead the discussion on this on this particular reform. That's one of the reasons why I mentioned earlier on that there was a lack of strategic thinking in this protest. When you are having a protest, you should have psychoanalyzed the people you are dealing with. Who is President Buhari? He is a very melancholic person. He talks less. How many times have we seen him? Fine, it's very bad. It's very bad of a leader not to be communicative, not to be able to communicate your vision and your mission to the people. That is bad enough. But over the years, he's over 70 years old. You cannot change him he's been there. Okay, he's been there for like 5-6 years now. You cannot change him overnight. When he came to power, he was over 70. You cannot change him overnight. He has always been a melancholic person. That's one of the reasons why I said the protesters were not strategic enough to analyze who you are dealing with. He will not come out and say, and because of his military background, you will not see him. He will take that stance of, I'm a military person, I'm not going to yield my ground as easily as that. We might not say that is bad, but you should have analyzed the person you are dealing with. So with the President Buhari be able to lead the discussion sincerely from the bottom of my heart, he cannot lead that discussion. He does not have the capacity to lead that discussion. but he has the political will to see that discussion through if we finally have that discussion of that police reform that we are meant to do. He's a person that if he's committed to something, he can see it through. But for him to take that leadership and say, okay, let me gather people together, let me be the one to anchor this, he will not do that. He's not that kind of person. He's not an anchor person. His own is able to see through a political reform. Maybe he's able to give directive to his people, do this, and he can give them all the political support for them to see it through. But for him to be able to anchor it on his own, he's not that kind of person that can do it. Am I pessimistic or am I optimistic? Well, based on the fact that I've seen that he was able to get the police bill passed in December 2019, I have a little bit of belief that, basing it on that, I have the belief that I'm optimistic enough that, okay, the police reform, and because the voice has been very loud, and the voice was also, the protest was loud and clear, and it has also sounded a note of warning to the political class. I'm sure that apart from the citizens, apart from the protesters, even the politicians themselves, we put a pressure on the system to see through this reform, because my fear is when next this kind of protests erupt, it should be worse than this, and they are even going to make more demands, more than what they have already made. So for now, I will still opt for the optimism that President Buhari will see it through. Thank you very much.
And how about you, Omowumi and Kola? First to you, Omowumi. What do you think about this question about leading a national dialogue and the president's ability to do that? And I also want to hear your thoughts on this question, Kola, as well. Take a little poll of us together on this.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So for me, I think that it's not about, maybe it's partly about the president being able to lead this national dialogue. But most importantly, I think what we need is the political will. And to say that we have a president who lacks effective communication skills, one thing I'm so very sure of is that when President Buhari wanted to be president, he went around the 30 states of Nigeria. He communicated his intentions in the simplest way that Nigerians can understand. I would not have voted for a president in his first term if I did not hear from him what he's willing to bring to the table, what he's able to bring to the table. So Nigerians, a good number of Nigerians voted President Buhari into power because they believed in his leadership capability, also based on his, political trajectory. And now that we have President Buhari in power, he's not able to communicate to Nigerian youth, not because he can't communicate, but because he's not deliberate about it. If he prioritizes this as something that has to be done, it doesn't cost him anything. You realize that in Lagos, Governor Sanwo-Olu spoke to Lagosians, but Lagosians were still waiting for the president to say something. They wanted to hear from the president, because also to let you know that even if all the governors agree, and the president does not demonstrate the political will, it's like pouring water inside basket. So if someone tells me that that Muhammadu Buhari needs to be studied, I think I quite disagree with that. That we should have studied him, before coming out to do this and do that. And to also let you know that this protest never had any template. It was something that was planned. There was, we've had several social media boards around NSAS, end police brutality. And like I said, there has been a trend to this. But this was it was a ticking bomb, There was this video that went viral on social media, and that we engineered everyone. It didn't bring people back to the table. We took people to the streets. People came up with the idea of protest, and then we took to the streets to vent our grievances against police brutality in Nigeria. So we didn't have a framework. It wasn't something that was pre-planned. So coming to the table to come and analyze, maybe it's something we should have done, but also that we didn't do that. I don't think we should, attribute that failure or whatever thing that went wrong down the line to not even, analyze the person we're dealing with. So for me, I'm really pessimistic about President Buhari leading this dialogue, also because I think that he lacks the political will. I think that he doesn't prioritize this as an issue, that requires urgent attention. And I also think that he is taking Nigerian youth for granted. Also because he's not seeking, another term in office. That is how I see this. But I also feel that President Buhari has foot soldiers around him. He's not the one doing everything that this government has been doing. He has foot soldiers around him who do the field work. Whether it's the one giving the directive, is what we do not know. But if these foot soldiers can get on the field to implement some of the things it directs them to implement, then if it's good, why can't they also implement it? So as much as I'm pessimistic that, President Buhari cannot lead this dialogue, I also feel that it behoves on his foot soldiers. He has ministers, he has governors, we have the governors forum. I believe that if the governors forum mount so much pressure on President Buhari, if his ministers mount so much pressure on him, if people who are being fingered start resigning from office, I think it's a wrong signal for the government, and I think that it will put the government on its toes to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm. I want to just jump in there. A couple of things from the audience. Oluyemi is saying, we as Nigerians have other issues to worry about. Mind reading the president or guessing his intentions should be the least of our worries and concerns. So interesting feedback on this discussion we've been having about sort of strategizing given the president's sort of temperament and approach to things. And one other comment I had, and I'm curious your thoughts. We've been coming up with this term political will, and I know a number of us have been using that term political will. But as a political scientist, and everyone knows that I am a political scientist, I hear this term quite a lot, but I'm never sure what it actually means, right? Does it mean if we just try, we can do it? Or if we can just get political actors to go against maybe their own interest, we can do it? Like, what is political will? It's a term that makes me think that if we just try, we can do anything. But perhaps it's more than political will. Perhaps it's the incentive structures that are in place that militate, that prevent meaningful reforms, that is the real issue, not a will, a lack of trying perhaps. So I'm curious your thoughts on this. Kola, do you like this term political will? Do you have a good definition of this term political will? Because we hear that in our conversation today, and we also hear that from a lot of the protesters as well.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I don't like the term, but sadly that's the reality. And simply put, it just means acting in the best interest of the common good. And that's where people keep saying political will. For example, reducing the salaries of or the remuneration of the National Assembly, which is the highest paid in the world, takes you acting against your own interests for the common good. So, in a simplistic form, is you saying, you know what, my political cronies may not like some of these actions I'm about to take, but I'm going to do it in the interest of the common good of the entire country. And that's why we always use this term, it takes your political will, because you're a politician and you need to take action. On the issue, on the previous question, I am pessimistic. And like one of the viewers said that we don't have time. This is 2020. We don't have time to be, you are a president is a president. And there are some things that are very presidential. One of the things that makes you a president, you're not just a leader of a community association, you're a leader of the biggest black nation in the world. 1 in every 5 black person is a Nigerian. And you're leading a country that has 64% of its population as young people. So what they demand, you're dealing with millennials, and now you're beginning to deal with purposeful millennials who can take on an hashtag and take it to the rest of the world, and they will use that hashtag to put pressure on you. So what you require at all times, which, to be fair to the Lagos State Governor, is doing very actively and is showing up. The biggest action of act of a leader is to show up when the decision demands. So the body language of the president doesn't seem to say this. We might say it's his nature, it's his characteristics, but you are president, you just need to take action. And like I said, we've seen the president go for events, political rallies. Even during COVID, they abandoned all the COVID protocols, and they had very interesting political rallies. Government officials attended. A lot of youths were mobilized to those political rallies. Then we now say you cannot, for 5 minutes, land with an helicopter at the Lekki toll gate and spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes just to listen and to show up. Get back in your helicopter and head back to Abuja or somewhere. That would have given some level of win to the protesters. And you would have said, you would have even been justified to say, you know what, I was actually there, I spoke to you, and I asked you to go back, I will deal with this. And you see leaders around the world do this. You see, no matter how people may dislike Donald Trump, he still shows up when it matters. No matter
we don't have to talk about the U.S. president here. Everyone knows my views. Although, Kola, I will mention that Leaders of Africa is holding a live event on Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. Nigerian time to discuss the president's view and his perception in Africa. But you go ahead, Kola. Sorry to interrupt.
So it's important that as a leader you just show up. And that's what maybe would have doused a lot of the tension. And we've seen some of the state governors being able to do this. But the truth is that some of the state governors cannot control the federal machinery. The state governors don't control the police, they don't control the army. So they are also limited in what they can do. But I still strongly believe that with this kind of organization that we've seen with this protest, with this kind of mobilization, the political class would start thinking that, hey, it took 10 days to be able to organize this kind of people. What if they now have time for the next 2 years in preparation for the elections? You can imagine what they will be able to do. And that maybe will force a lot of the politicians, the leaders in government to start having the right level of conversations with these young people. What I would advise they should not try to do is to divide and conquer, but rather ride the wave of this protest to demand for reforms across board within the polity.
So I think that was a very interesting conversation. And again, we'd like to invite our viewers to our next program on the African perspective on U.S. election, where Peter is going to be talking about issues, surrounding the election, the candidate and the reaction of the people in the United States and globally. On this issue, we've spoken so much on the pivotal role of social media platforms to the success and otherwise of this rally. And there were incidents that happened, in different parts of the country. And the darkest of those days was yesterday in Lagos, where properties were set aflame. And we want to sympathize with all of those that have lost their properties, all of those that have been affected, the protesters, and everybody that are psychologically and emotionally traumatized. We are the leaders of Africa. We sympathize with you, and we will find ways to work with you to help move Lagos State and the country past these very tragic incidences. There have been concerns about misinformation and the instrumentality of social media towards promoting misinformation. How do you think the social media actually plays into this? Because what we read is massacre in Lekki, and that triggered my annoyance. Who massacred who? There was this news that 78 people were killed in Lekki. But when I was reading through my WhatsApp messages and some of the Nigerian newspapers, it was said that nobody actually died in Lekki. The question to you is this true? If this is not true, who is responsible for this misinformation? And what lesson do we need to learn from this going forward? Over to you, Dr. Ayodeji Obelawo.
Okay, thank you very much, Ghana. To a very large extent, like you rightly mentioned, like Kola actually mentioned earlier on, that, and I think Omowumi also mentioned that this protest was driven by the social media people connected with themselves over the social media, and they never even, some of them have never even known each other before, and they were able to organize themselves in such a manner that you handle ambulance, you handle fund collection, you handle provision of logistics, and you handle let's say production of t-shirts, and they were able to do it using the powers of the tools of the social media, which was a very big plus to this to the protest. However, like you already mentioned, there was actually a misuse of the same tool by mischievous makers, and the end game for me, I might not know, but I guess is probably to stir up more emotions and to get more people on the street and to apply pressure on the government of the day for them to address the issues that the youth are clamoring for. But Nigeria is a multi-ethnic and multi-religious state that just a very slight thing, we might end up having a crisis like Rwanda in our hands. That's why I feel for the mischief makers that were using that were taking advantage of the opportunity to rile up emotions and to stir up emotions unnecessarily, they were being unpatriotic, and they were being, I would say, they are just haters of humanity, because anything could have gone overboard and would have had a major crisis in our hands. And apart from this, I also have the government to blame in a way. You cannot, freedom of speech is good. Freedom of speech is nice. It's one of the core areas of democracy, and it's one of the core areas, it's one of the core advantage of democracy. And that's why all of us can get on the street. For some of us that had a short stint under the military rule, we know what it is to have democracy. We know, for some of us that we grew up under General Abacha, we know what democracy is, and I would not throw away my democracy for military rule for anything. If the military there comes back today, I will get on. If we die there, because I don't want to go back to those dark ages again. So the truth is, but we were at a tipping point when these people started spreading fake news with the same tool that brought this protest and that has made this protest to be a success. On the part of the government, I think government should sit down and look at a way. I don't know what has been done in other countries. I know that countries like Rwanda, they've come out with a very strong bill on utilization or on fake news. Other countries of the world, they've also come up with strong bills on fake news. If you want to inform people accurately and appropriately with the tools that you have in your hands. Don't use your tool that you have in your hands to create a mistrust that can ignite the whole of Nigeria and that can set the whole of Africa on fire. Nigeria is a country of 200 million people, and if there's any crisis in Nigeria, not only Nigeria will bear it, the whole of West Africa, the whole of Sub-Saharan Africa is going to feel the impact. And even the rest of the world is going to feel the impact, because I don't know any country that can take 200 million people as refugees. So the government needs to sit up and look at a proper framework that will not infringe on our fundamental human right of speech, and for us to be able to associate at the same time, and for us to be able to communicate, but in a way that will make us responsible for everything we put out, for every information that we put out by ourselves, using either our mouth or using either our means of communication, whether the tools in our hands, like our phone, our laptop, our tabs, and all those stuff, and using our social media handles, or you are communicating to the people. You must be responsible for whatever you post and for whatever you circulate. The idea of, we have seen media houses, okay, I was going through Facebook and Instagram, and I can see that for every post that was coming out, I can see Facebook and Instagram responding in real time and tagging it fake news. They were the ones that they felt was genuine were not tagged. But Twitter was a little bit slower, and most people are more on Twitter than Instagram or Facebook nowadays. So a lot of things were circulating faster and people were just emotions were boiling, that why would they do this to your fellow Nigerians? If they can do this to your fellow Nigerians, they will do it to me too. And I would rather die on the street than die in my house. So the protesters should also find a way, or with the youth to also find a way of, when we are protesting, don't let us limit the circulation of fake news or even but eradication is left to government. But as youth, as citizens of the country, as responsible citizens of the country, we should also take time to educate ourselves to know that you don't using the platform in our hands to circulate fake news can cause havoc and can ignite the whole country, and there will not be any returning point. So for me, that's just my position on the issue of usage of social media and the fake news circulation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think, in this time period, we're dealing with multiple viruses, right? The one virus of COVID-19 and the virus of misinformation that has been around with us for a longer period and spreads just like a virus. And I like how you reflected on how social media platforms are beginning to regulate or reflect on some of these sources of misinformation. And I like your point about having some sort of verification and the importance that there's transparency and verification around the information that is out there. And I'm curious, Omowumi, on this point of misinformation, from your perspective, how concerned are you about the spread of information, and what can really be done to deal with that spread of information? Is it something that civil society or organizations or individuals need to check themselves, or is social media itself supposed to police and the media is supposed to police some of these stories or discussions that are taking place on social media? What are your thoughts?
I'm probably more concerned than you are with the way where misinformation has been spreading, in the last few days. But I think that it's very important for us to look at a long-term solution of having like a policy framework that would not be a drawback policy framework that would give us something with the right hand and then take it back with the left hand, but a policy framework that would check this, and also still preserve the rights of people to freedom of expression, freedom of speech, without violating the fundamental rights of another person. In the last few days, I've seen a lot of people slip into depression. I've seen people develop mental health issues, also because the things, they access on the pages of social media are not regulated. So, but I think that in this whole struggle, we've got a good number of Nigerians who are influencers on the pages of social media, that a lot of young Nigerians are following and they look up to. So I think that it behoves on people like us, young people who, whose voices are audible, and young people who are also, mobilizing other young people to work with the social media influencers, basically also to try and see how they can shape the kind of information that goes out, because it's very important that people who are following us also those of us who have large following, we should make it a point of duty to make sure that whatever gets on our page is authentic news and not fake news. Sometimes when we see information on a particular person's page, because of the status of that person, we assume that piece of information is from a very reliable source, and it cannot but be true. So if we make it a point of duty as social media influencers to ensure that what gets on our pages are authentic news and not fake news, I think to an extent, would also be able to manage that. Also, I'm aware that, some of the social media platforms have this button that you could red flag a piece of information if it's false, and also in our little small corners, I have a team of young people, volunteers, staff that work with me. I educate them a lot, on things like this. We should also make that a point of duty in our little small corners to educate people around us about misinformation. So there is so much we can do, even though, we might not really achieve so much, but it's very important that we at least move the needle from point A to point B, because we don't know the seed that will sprout. So we have to always keep, planting. So I think that we should spread our efforts across board, engage the social media influencers, while we also advocate for a policy framework that would curb this to the barest minimum and also preserve the fundamental rights of people as enshrined in the Constitution.
Absolutely. And before Ghana, you jump in here, I just want to say we have about 5 more minutes until we're going to conclude. So please get in your final comments and questions. And also at leadersofafrica.org/live, you can find the place where you can vote on that poll that you may be seeing on your screen about the likelihood of the Nigerian government dealing with police reforms in some of the ways that we've been talking about today in this session. So if you want to add your voice to that poll, go to leadersofafrica.org/live and you will see the area near the video to vote in that poll. Over to you, Ghana.
So Mr. Director Kola, we got to know that you have a lot of experience on issues of IT strategic communication. So we'd like to know your thoughts on this issue of misinformation. And as you do reflect on that, we are the leaders of Africa, and we understand this the feelings of Nigeria. It's about healing. It's about healing. You know, we've lost a lot of properties. There are a lot of concerns, a lot of divisions in the country right now. As you reflect on this issue of misinformation, how do we lead the nation going forward? Who should lead what? What are the roles of communities? The roles of thought leaders like you? The roles of religious leaders? And the role of everyone in the country? Go back to you, Dr. Kola.
Thank you very much. I think it's a very important issue, not just for this whole EndSARS and police brutality, but as a society in general. We've seen where fake news has influenced election outcomes. We've seen where fake news has caused violence across board. So it's not just about this issue. And that's the reality of the times that we live in today. With social media, somebody created something and it goes, nobody's fact checking, and you retweet, you post, you broadcast, and it becomes almost factual. So what I would say on the short term is that a lot of influencers on social media need to be more cautious because it does not just affect their own reputation as influencers, but also it causes inflammation of the issues that very, very sensitive issues. So the first thing is all the influencers on social media need to be very, very cautious. They need to fact check everything, know the source, know when to post, verify before sharing. That's what, for example, during this protest, we saw somebody sharing, one of the celebrities sharing an image of somebody that was presumed dead, but actually it was actually from a previous stage play that they had in the past. And it just went like wildfire. Other celebrities jumped on it and they started sharing it. So as celebrities, as social media influencers, we need to be very careful in what we share. Secondly, technology companies also have a role to play here. We saw that with what Instagram and Facebook was trying to do. Maybe sometimes they went overboard, but I think it's something that all the technology companies are actually putting in place to ensure that they also have a social responsibility in limiting the spread of fake news. So technology companies have a role to play, influencers have a role to play, and most importantly, the governments also have a role to play. And when I say this very cautiously, so that because we have the social media bill or cybercrime bill that is now becoming a big topic of debate in Nigeria today. They should be cautious in putting out this bill so that it doesn't infringe on the fundamental human rights of the citizens to express themselves. When we see people deliberately spreading false news to incite ethnic or religious sentiment, then maybe the government can step in there. But it's a very fine line that, if not properly executed or done, may infringe on people's fundamental human rights. But the one that we influence immediately are technology companies and social media. And finally, as citizens and as individuals, we also owe it a duty of responsibility to fact check, to validate before we share. And you need to also ask yourself, why am I sharing this? And a lot of, like Omowumi said, people are going through a lot of mental trauma in the last 24 to 48 hours as a result of a lot of images that they've been sharing, whether true or untrue, or whether it was from the past, or from another country entirely that's been shared as part of this whole protest. So fact checking is going to be a job of the future. Mm-hmm. It doesn't exist today, but it's going to be a career for young people, just like we have drone pilots today. So it's going to be a job, and I believe that with data science, with AI, with algorithms, we can actually detect people who are sending false information. We can actually track back, even from images alone, track back to the source, and we can pinpoint. And I hope the hands of the Lord does not catch up with people spreading this false information. And I'll ask them to just desist from it because it's really getting out of hand.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been seeing on social media and that's certainly been reported on in the news that isn't misinformation is the engagement of the diaspora, in particular the Nigerian diaspora in the context of the protests. And I'm curious your view, because most of our audience is on the continent of Africa and in Nigeria today, but I know some people are watching from the diaspora. And so I'm curious your thoughts about whether the diaspora is playing a constructive role, and can they play a constructive role in this protest, or should they sort of take a back seat to what many activists are pushing for in the country, those on the grounds, those in the grassroots today? Or will the grassroots be amplified by the role and the inclusion of the diaspora in the conversation? Ayodeji, what do you think? What is the role for the diaspora in the protests and in the broader reform movement?
Okay, thank you, Peter. The role of diaspora, I think, is to give voice to the aspirations and the desires of Nigerians outside the country, wherever all of them are residing. Nigerians are the most traveled Africans or black people in the world, and there's virtually anywhere in the world you will not find Nigeria apart from maybe Mars. That's why you might not find any Nigerian for now. But I'm sure that any country where you get to and there's not a single Nigerian there, I would just advise you to leave that country, because that means the possibility of existence being in that particular place is low. What am I trying to say? We are a very well-traveled group of people. Now, what that does to any protest, to any aspiration or agitation, is that it externalizes. It gives us opportunity to externalize our agitations. That is, if government decide to even shut down the whole country, they cannot shut down our brothers and sisters in the diaspora. They will continue to be our voice, and they will continue to mount pressure on the government of the countries where they are residing to also mount pressure on our own government. So, and Kola made mention of something earlier on, that the government should realize that times, we've had changes in times, and we are now dealing with a more technologically savvy generation, a more technologically savvy generation. And apart from that, they are a group of people that are widely traveled. So you cannot shut down the whole country and be thinking, or you cannot use the same military method to shut down a protest. It will not work. You have to evolve your strategy to come into the 21st century, to be in line with the 21st century, to know that, see, as you are shutting down, if you like shut down the internet, people will develop VPN to bypass the internet, and they will still keep. If you shut down Twitter today, I can assure you that within the next 48 hours, Nigerians will develop a new app to externalize their agitation. So our brothers, the Nigerians outside the country in diaspora, they are our voices, and they are a very critical part of our agitations as Nigerians. And they will always continue to play a key role in whatever we are doing, because I also love the fact that most of them, they did not detach from Nigeria completely. They still see themselves, even after picking up citizenship of other countries, they still see themselves as Nigerians, and they are very, very well involved in, and I still see some of them still contributed financially and in terms of resources to this protest and to this EndSARS protest. So they still see themselves as Nigerians, as they are protesting in other places, as they are attending the protest in other parts of the world, they are still contributing financially. And apart from that, even economically, apart from oil being the largest earner for Nigeria in terms of revenue, our diaspora community comes second in terms of remittance. So they still remain a key part of our community in terms of economic power and in terms of making our society to be a better place, in terms of governance and in terms of development. So going back to your question, they are a very key part of our agitation, and they are a very important group of people to the nation as a whole economically. Thank you very much.
And just by a show of hands, Omowumi and Kola, do you also agree that the diaspora can play a constructive role? Do you agree, thumbs up or thumbs down or thumbs sideways? That's a thumbs up. Okay, so we're kind of in agreement about the role of the diaspora. So those who are listening in the diaspora should be encouraged about their potential role in this broader dialogue. Ghana, we have time for one last question before we check the poll and close. Ghana, do you have one last question for us, and then we will close?
I think I'm going to be repeating myself. It's about going forward. We are critical to know. We really want to know from you folks. What do we do to heal the country, to bring everybody together, to yield to the demands and the agitations of the protester, to foster good governance? What role do you envision for yourself going forward, healing the country? What role do you envision for your communities, different religious community, academic community, non-academic community, as well as the political community? And how should this start? Over to you, Director Omowumi.
So thank you for that closing question. Yeah, it's a good way to also share, what I think is best to do, within the context of the protests that has erupted in the last few weeks. So I think specifically, let me just talk about the police reform. Going forward, I think that we need a strategic assessment of the Nigerian police. If we're going to record any kind of reform, there has to be a strategic assessment. And this strategic assessment is supposed to form the basis of any strategic planning, that would, in clear terms, identify the roles, what the goals are, what the Nigerian police force should look like. And of course, when you talk about a plan, you have to also have at the back of your mind that you're going to be implementing those plans. And in the course of the implementation, you also need to factor in evaluation. So I think one of the issues I raised earlier is, within the Nigerian police force, do we audit, do we evaluate what is working for us, what is no more working for us, what are the areas where we need to consolidate on our existing effort. So I think when we have all of this in place, we're going to have a reformed Nigerian police where they have their capacity built, there is adequate budgeting, resourcing, and also in terms of oversight, every other stakeholder that is supposed to discharge oversight functions on the Nigerian police is also doing that as it should be done. But looking at the broader spectrum in terms of bad governance, the Nigerian police is a microcosm of the broader society. We need to know that. So even if things do not work across board, it's going to impact negatively on the efficiency of the Nigerian police. So as citizens, we would continue to lend our voice. As civil society organizations, would continue to advocate for good governance, and we'll continue to hold the government accountable, till the needful is done.
Wonderful. Kola, and then quickly, Ayodeji, very quickly on Ghana's question.
Okay. On individual level, our RSVP, I'll register, I'll select, I'll vote, and I'll protest my vote in 2023. I'll add one more, probably run for office in 2023. That's on an individual level. At a community level, I would say that this is an opportunity for legislators, people representing us in the parliament, to start having conversations with the communities that they represent around these issues. That would be a quick win for the politicians. For the young people, I would say this is the best time to start organizing in preparation for the next election. The next election, I can bet you, there will be no leader for the youth, but there will be a movement. And that is what we need to really think about. There's going to be a movement. And I hope that just few days or few months or few weeks to the election, the politicians will not give the young people an hashtag to anchor their anger in the elections. I hope that will not happen, but I predict that it will happen, and that might sway the 2023 elections.
And we're certainly going to have you back, Kola, to talk about those elections as things move closer to the next national election. Wonderful. And lastly, to you, Ayodeji.
Okay, thank you, Peter. For me, from the side of the youth, I would say I would like to see this evolve into a movement, like Kola rightly mentioned earlier on. This should evolve into a movement and even into a political party if need be. If it cannot evolve into a political party, they should infiltrate all the major political parties. And from the grassroots, start taking power, start taking over gradually from the older generation. 2023 is 2-3 years away, but it is not that far away. If you're in Nigeria, if you want to win an election, you don't start working two months to the election. You don't start working 3 months to the election. You must start far ahead of time. So for the gains of this protest to be sustained and to be for us to not to lose the game, I will also pray that the youth will be able to transform this into a movement and into a viable political party. And viable political party in the sense that if people can come together in a matter of hours, in a matter of days, to fund a major protest of this magnitude, that means they can also evolve to have a party of their own that they will fund digitally, that they will campaign for digitally, and that they will also see their results coming to their aspiration coming to pass by ensuring that the people they trust are put in place. But be that is made, as a community, as an individual, I also want us to look at our lives. In each of our lives, we are all SARS in one way or the other. The lecturers, the drivers on the road, every Nigerian is a SARS in his own little way. And we should remember that change begins with us. The SARS that we are seeing that is brutalizing us on the road is a function of the society. In our own little ways, in our own little corner, we have also been SARS and we have been brutalizing others in our own ways. So change must begin with all of us, and we should all ensure that we actually end the SARS in our different lives. With that, we are going to have a better society. With that, we are going to grow we are going to evolve into a better nation, and a nation all of us we are going to be proud of at the end of the day. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. It sounds like our conversation has moved from the nature of the protest and sort of the upswell of protest to now sort of dealing with the political side of things, particularly the politics in the context of elections, right? And I think one of the important things to keep in mind, and I think has come out of this conversation, is that both are necessary. Both the grassroots organizing and conversations that happen in between elections, but also mobilization when it comes to electoral politics as well. And so I really appreciate that reflection. Before we say goodbye and finish our conversation, I do want to put up the poll results here. And I know most of you are watching on YouTube right now, so you may not have saw where to go on the poll, but in the future live broadcast, you can go to leadersofafrica.org/live and vote. You can see that most people watching who answered the poll were actually very optimistic about the Nigerian government enacting policies against police brutality, with 40% of you saying very likely, and another 40% saying likely, and 20% saying unlikely. Of course, this is not a scientific poll. As somebody who does a lot of survey research work, this is not a scientific poll, but it gives us a little bit of sense about the optimism of those who are watching today's conversation. So thank you for joining in the conversation. And now over to you, Ghana, to say goodbye to our guest as we begin to close our program today.
So from Dr. Ayodeji Obelawo, a seasoned financial expert and economist in the country, to Director Omowumi, a barrister with tons of experience working in the civil society spaces in Nigeria, and to Director Kola, somebody who's tons of experience working across different industries in the country. He's facilitated a lot of startup work with a good number of youth. We thank you for your time and the insight you have brought to bear to retool the conversation on the EndSARS movement in Nigeria. I believe at the Leaders of Africa that opinions will shape the process of going forward, as we have a good number of government officials listening to our live broadcast today. We'll be coming for you sometimes, to debrief and to have another conversation what has happened after the EndSARS movement. Thank you, and do have the best of the day.
Thank you so much. And I echo all of Ghana's sentiment. And I just want to say thank you for engaging in this conversation. This is not the end of the conversation, obviously. It continues on past today, past next week, past the future months into elections. So we look forward to seeing you all participating again in the future in this conversation. And we also plan on holding similar events, focusing on not just EndSARS, but some of the broader concerns that were raised by all of our panelists today that need to be dealt with. Everything ranging from misinformation to the issues of large-scale inequality in Nigeria, but also in other neighboring African countries as well. So thank you to our panelists. It has been great to have you here. And so with that, I want to send it back to Violet, who will close out today's session. So over to you, Violet.
That was an absolutely fantastic job, Peter and Ghana. And to our viewers, I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. Thank you for joining Leaders of Africa Live. And again, welcome to the Leaders of Africa family. It has been an immense pleasure having you here with us today. To our guests, your contributions have been deeply insightful, and we hope you will join us again at our many live events, including bi-weekly hangouts on Tuesdays, which features a brief presentation and moderated audience discussion in Zoom, and bi-weekly This Week on Saturdays, which features the Leaders of Africa team discussing stories from the week's news. Do join us this coming Tuesday on Hangouts as we discuss the upcoming US elections and Africans' perspectives on the issue. Again, please remember to hit that subscribe button and click the notifications bell to hear first when we go live and post new content. And also, like and share the videos, as we'd really appreciate that. Also, do continue the conversation by joining our private Facebook group, Telegram channel, and Discord community. So folks, that's it from us today. I wish you all a very wonderful rest of the week, and until our next session, be blessed and stay safe.